I'm Trinny Woodall, and I'm in great company.
What do they say? There's drains and then there's uppers. What is the?
I don't know.
There's a drain
Okay,
and then there's.
quickly. There she is on the laptop.
Yeah. There's a drain and then there's like. But you're the opposite of drain. You definitely bring people up. Have you felt those low moments, or do you not allow yourself to get there?
No, I have felt those low moments.
You have
Definitely, yes, lots of times.
Radiators.
Drains or radiator.
That's it.
So I had that moment. Susannah and I had worked together for 10 years. And
where did you guys meet?
Susannah was working for The Telegraph, writing about women's cricket. She just had an affair with Imran Khan for a few years. And, or is she still with David Linney? I don't know. But she was doing one thing.
Something happened.
Right, yeah, something happened.
Something happened.
So she was doing that, and she wanted to do something else. So then there was me, and I was trying to do business, and I hated business. My dad was a businessman, and I was just trying to do it, but I had no qualifications, nothing. I always felt a fraud. I felt so fraudulent, and it wasn't working. But
because you didn't understand it, or you felt out of place?
I was so out of place. It was me and many men on a trading floor. I was trying to fit in, so I kind of swore like a trooper. And, we were doing puts and stops and butterflies and options and commodity trading, the arse end of things, really. It is the arse end. Commodity trading can be the arse end. I did physicals and then futures.
Just quickly, out of how many people were you the only woman?
There was a secretary in the front room, and then there was me and the sales team, and then there were about 60 men. Yeah.
How do you hold your own in that scenario?
You develop this sort of skill of just becoming one of the boys. In that environment, the only way I thought I could succeed was to become one of the boys. So they were all loutish. Imagine the most loutish of your friends, and that was this collection of people. I'm in my 20s. And I think I've got to dress like a boy. So I raid my father's wardrobe. I come into work in the winter in his covert coat. I get my suits from Miss Selfridge, but I go and take all the buttons off, and I go to the button queen in Marylebone Lane, and I get livery buttons on my suits. I then buy, with my salary, I buy Ferragamo men's shoes. No, Fratelli Rossetti men's brogues.
Yeah.
And I just become a boy.
You became but
it's the only way I felt, because I had never felt sexy, feminine, booby girl. All right, so I couldn't lean into let's be ultra feminine in this male world. That wasn't me, and I always felt more comfortable to be slightly masculine. So I lent into that, and I even had quite a low voice. A lot of the people who were my clients thought I was a man.
On the phone?
Yeah, I had this client
because you purposely did that.
I've always had quite a low voice, but I had one client who was this Nigerian, and you did everything by phone, and you were trying to sell them a fund. And I remember I'd chat to him every day, and he'd call me up, and he thought I was a man. And I realised only after second call when he started sort of saying to me, when I come to London, can you take us out some saucy bars? And I was like, oh, fuck. And then the time came when he said, I'm going to come to London, and I want to give you, 250 grand, this fortune. And I was so excited, but I thought he's going to meet me. And because he's going to discover I'm a girl, this is not going to work. So I took the person sitting next to me, who was my sort of buddy, and I said, you've got to be me. So we went in, you used to record all the conversations then. So we went into the recording room, and I went back on all the conversations I had with him. And I said, look, listen to the conversations so you know what we've been talking about. So he does that. And I said, I'll split the commission with you. So then he comes that day, the day he comes to the office, and Philip is in the room with him, and I'm the secretary, just in case he makes some mistakes and I can pass him notes or something.
Are you serious?
I'm the secretary. And so Philip negotiates it and remembers to say the things I said before, signs the deal. But that was the way. The way that I did it.
But Trinny, do you really think if he had realised that you were a woman, he wouldn't have done the deal with you because you were a woman?
He was a very alpha man, and I think that he would have been really embarrassed by the conversations we had.
Or would he have been pleasantly surprised? Oh, he'd have been embarrassed by the conversations you were having.
Yeah, and then realised I was gone. Don't forget, this is the 80s. You weren't even born.
88.
All right. This was actually 89, so you were a year old.
I was a year old.
You're a year old, and I'm trading commodities. All right, so that's what it was then, and it was quite different.
But okay, but then Do you think that in life, because you would have realized at some point that he realized that you were a man, and you didn't say anything back. You just sort of went, okay, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, yes, I did. And there was something that made me feel.
Yeah, what made you feel?
I will be more successful in this stage if he thinks I'm a man still. It sounds inconceivable to you. But
no, it doesn't sound inconceivable.
I knew it to be true so much.
Because it makes what happened. When I did Made in Chelsea for many years, right? I realized very quickly I would do a scene and people would find it funny, and I went, okay, I got to be funny there. And then I did another scene, and then I would be really loud, and they go, God, you're so energetic, so loud. So I'd have to be more. And so I became this version of myself, which becomes exhausting. When you're not being truly authentic,
you become exhausting.
You become you're drained, and if you are going into you're trading with men, you're becoming more masculine because that's what you feel like you have to.
I was swearing like a trooper. I'd go home and my dad would say, what happened to you? What happened to my daughter? The thing is, Jamie, I was never successful in it. I was always, I always say this thing that I went in.
In your eyes, that is.
No. In everybody's eyes, all right? Okay, there was Black Monday and I was the first one out the door, last one in, first one out, for sure. I would go to I talked about this, I'd go in on the tube in the morning and I'd have the Financial Times on the outside and I'd have the Daily Mail on the inside. Every day. I pretended because I had no idea. I had to do my Series 3 mercantile exams, Chicago Stock Exchange mercantile exam. I looked at it and I thought, this is gobbledygook. How I passed, I don't know. But I really didn't do well at it in any way you could look at it. And I realized I've got to leave.
Two things here. Firstly, I disagree. I think
I was really bad, Jamie.
No, I think you were, but you still got it. That's what's so interesting. You still got it. You didn't look at it and you think the 80s, okay, I don't fit in here because it's a different time, all these different things going. You thought, no, I'm going to go and do that, and you went and did it. Which for me that's the winner there. You actually went and did it.
Yeah.
I remember when my mum said to me, I was 18 years old, she said, you can't get a job. And I said, I'll get a job. She said, no, you can't. And so I walked up to Byron Burger restaurant.
Yes, I remember.
On Kensington High Street. And I walked in there and I said, hi. And they went, hi, who are you? And I said, I'm here to apply for a job, front of house. And they went, okay, what's your experience? I said, I've had many years' experience. You're doing this and this with my dad and all these different things. Made a complete lie. And they went, okay, you start on Thursday. And I came back and I was so bad. There was one moment when my first week where something happened in the kitchen, nothing was working. These people said to me, where's our food? And I didn't know what to do, so I just walked off because I was so, but the victory is actually getting there and putting yourself in that situation.
Did people think you were as bad as you were?
Yes.
Did you get fired?
No, well, I kind of gave up.
Yeah, you didn't get fired. I got fired. There's a difference. I got fired. All right. So I got this is my win. You can try and have the win, but you walked out. You didn't get fired. They thought you were good. You had this thing that what you felt inside was so profoundly different from what people saw. So maybe your trajectory is how those two have come together. Whereas before there was more front than Brighton Beach, and it was about your leaning into yourself and actually becoming a bit of something and not the fakery.
You're on the training floor. You're doing that. Okay, I want to know this. So, why did you decide to do that? If you didn't really want to do it, you knew you were about it. Who you were trying to impress?
My dad.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Classic. Now we're on the therapy chair. Shall I write back?
Now I open you up.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Jamie. No, David, it's a classic. It's a classic. I'm the youngest kid. My dad married twice, had 6 children, and had a very close relationship with my sister. And I didn't have a close relationship. I didn't really have a close relationship with either of my parents because I went away to school very young, and I just think I didn't connect with them. My mum had a lot of help, and so we didn't see her much, and then I went to boarding school. So by the time I got out, and I was 16 out of boarding school, and I went to London, my parents weren't living in England, so I lived with my sister, totally went crazy, and hardly finished school. And then had no qualifications and had to go straight to work. So I thought, how can I do something that can impress my dad? So I then started my first job. I worked, I did lots of different things over time. I'd sort of worked in doing PR and different things. But one job, I think my second or third, was going to work for a friend of mine who had a physicals trading house in cocoa. And I worked there. And I was their assistant. And so I just learned about physical market. And then from that, I learned about the future commodities market. So then 2 years later, I went back in and I got a job blagging to work as a trader, not a trader, as a salesperson. There's a big difference between trading and salesperson.
What's the difference?
Trading, you're on the floor, you're going 50 at 30, 50 at 30. And sales is like, yes, please do buy our fund. But still being quite, you do a little bit of the market's really great today. You've got to jump in today. It was really the arse end of, it wasn't the glamorous end of hedge fund management today or whatever it might be. It was the arse end of trading. And I was in it. I was like the bottom of the shoe. So, but I thought at least I'm in there.
And we see that there's a lot of drugs.
A lot of drugs. And so instead of doing what I thought it would do for my relationship with my dad, is he was sort of, what's happening to you? And you're not the person I recognize. So it actually did the opposite. So there was a moment when I sat down and he said, what's happened to you? This is when I was about 22. And I thought, oh, wow. And I said, I take drugs. Because suddenly there was convenience about my admitting it to my dad. There was that sense of, we can latch on to something here.
We're connected.
Because I can't think what else it could be. It's not that. I'm still enjoying trading drugs. But let me just say that. Because he said, you're not the daughter I recognize. And so you
use that vulnerability to connect.
In a way. You're reading too much in it. I wanted an out from this difficult conversation. So I just thought,
you just said it.
So I just said it. And we were around the kitchen table, I remember in it so well. And my dad said, well, now you've told me, you must stop. And my brother said, I think it's going to be a bit harder than that. I think she's going to need some help. So my brother was always my champion. He was really my champion. My sister was 4 years older, and the love, my father and my sister got on really well together. Yeah. My brother was sort of lost in between. My mother spoilt me, but I had a just uncomfortable relationship with her. And so my brother just said, I think it would take longer. So then I went to rehab, and I remember they sold this table to pay for rehab. It was a lovely library table, and they sold it. And I remember when I came out and when I relapsed, I always heard about that table. Yeah, I always heard about that table. And it was sort of,
Oh, we did the table.
Yeah. We could still have the table.
But you just said it at the table because you thought, oh, God, I need to get out of this awkward situation. I'm just going to say it.
I think we've all been there at some stage.
Yeah, no,
that
totally.
Feeling, where we can't admit what's right underneath because we just don't know. We can't vocalize it. So we just say the thing that's the most surface, because taking drugs is not about taking drugs. Taking drugs is about filling the hole. So I couldn't vocalize the fact that I found it really challenging to fill this hole I felt in my life, because that was too complex for me to vocalize. But I could say to him, well, I'm taking drugs, because that was a superficial thing that he could understand was a tangible thing. And it was my excuse for my behavior.
But also you don't really mean it, because you're just saying it. So then you go to rehab and you're just like, or did you kind of mean it?
I did mean it, because there's still that tiny bit of you. You've got to really hit enough of I've had enough. And there was a part of me that morning, I might have had a wild weekend thinking, I've had enough. I'm just so tired by this. But those moments are momentary. And then you get better again, and then you just think, I'm fine. And then it's a compounding of those moments that actually makes you stop using. There wasn't enough to lose. I was still living at home, things a bit safe. I had a salary, there just wasn't enough to lose.
So then why at 26 was there something to lose?
Because what I'd lost was more than a physical rock bottom. I had lost friendships. I'd lost my sense of humor. I'd lost vibrancy. I felt my light had gone out. And that loss is so tangible, and that's what made me stay clean. And
because I know exactly what you're saying, because amongst all the chaos, you still had the charm, and you still had the wit, and you still had this and that and all those kind of things. So, that's all whatever, but hey, it's okay. It's okay. Then that light goes. That's when you go, oh, hang on a second, something needs to change here because this isn't right. Yeah. I've lost my mojo. I've lost my spark.
Yeah, exactly.
We went on a tangent, but you were talking about Susannah and how you became friends. Yeah. So how did that relationship form?
So we meet, and I have this idea for this column in the Telegraph, not in the Telegraph, but just something where you go and you'd get honest advice as to what to wear. And there was not, it was a very different time from what there is now. There wasn't much to choose from that was in the high street. And it was all, in magazines months later, and therefore wasn't in the high street anymore. If high street clothes ever got into Vogue magazine, they'd sort of cut something and make it just for Vogue, but it would never be produced. So it was really different from now. But she loved the idea, and I told her the idea, and this friend who introduced us, she then called me the next day and said, can I take your idea? And I was like, no, you can't fucking steal my idea. But we could do it together. So we then work on it together. And then she has an editor who's saying, I've got this whole page free. I've just moved over from motoring to page free, the weekend section of the Telegraph.
You have no history in...
We have no... Susannah has experience in writing women's cricket.
Yeah, and you...
All right. And I have no experience. But I've had 15 years by the stage of every single girl who comes to my apartment ending up in my bathroom, seeing makeup, what they should use, skincare, what they should use, going in my bedroom. So people followed me for that. So I knew amongst a very small group of people that people came to me because they knew I would know, which is the kind of first time ever I felt confidence in my ability.
Gonna say, yeah.
Yeah.
Just quickly before we go, because do you not see the pattern? Which I
don't know, Jamie. I'm not a therapist.
No, anyway, I know.
Tell me the pattern you think you see.
I honestly see the pattern. The pattern with you is this. It's like it's. I think success is driven by risk and the ability to be brave. And there are these pockets throughout your life where something becomes problematic, and you go, okay, that needs to stop, or that needs to change. People don't typically change. They don't move. They stay doing the same thing forever because they like the monotony and the routine of it. And you don't. You're constantly, whether good or bad for you, you stick at it. But then if you sort of go, oh no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to move here. 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 And you're figuring out the whole time what works for you. Most people don't do that.
What I used to do, which I don't do now, and this is the big difference, and I've got two people living with me right now who are in their very early 30s and they're starting two new businesses, and I notice it in them and I challenge them on it, which is in my 20s, I'd always, if one thing wasn't working totally, I'd move on to the next because I wasn't prepared to have the patience to make it work. Because there's a big difference between what you deem to be people who are being monotonous, doing the same thing, and somebody who's being dynamic. There is that in between or the extremes where you'll just change because you don't like what's in front of you. So instead of actually proving to yourself you can succeed at something, you just change to the next. And I did that I had this sock business called Sock It To You, and the socks started to disintegrate, and I just moved on. I didn't think, let me resolve the problem. So there were moments when I had these little businesses, and then when I felt I had another business called Mission Impossible, which would have been called now today quintessentially, but it was what are the best things in London to do, and you would retain us, and we would book you a concierge service. And I got stationery made for it. That's the first thing I always did. I got the stationery made.
Because this feels proper.
Because it feels proper. It made you think it was proper.
Because then the imposter syndrome goes, because I've got a card.
I've got a card. Goes Unlimited. I have a card. Mission Impossible. I have a card. Sock It To You, which is the name of the sock company. I have a card, all right? It was always so important. But it was that slight, when it doesn't work, leave it. And with Trinny London, when I have a challenge, I work through it. So there's been a shift in how I look at things now.
But it's entrepreneurial, and I can see it. You're going through life finding these distractions and just going, okay, I'm going to try this, do this while this is going. This is how I fund my life, but this is actually what I want to try and start doing.
Yeah.
So you then start writing this article in the newspaper with Susannah.
Yes.
Okay, you again, this is just like you having this sort of amazing blind belief that you can just go and do it, which is just amazing. It becomes successful.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens next?
So
Then
it was successful for about 8 years.
yeah.
About 2 years into it, a woman who was starting, this is like dinosaur land, but Sky cable TV had not started in England. We were at analog, and B Sky B was the first bit of cable. And this woman called Diana Nelms.
This is 1940.
Yeah. This is when is this? This is 2001.
Okay.
Or 2001.
Yeah.
And so that's starting, and she wants some quick TV. So she commissions a show for us called Girls Who Shop. Nobody saw this show. Nobody, thank God. So it was filmed in my home, and we went up and we took people shopping. And then there was also another bit where we had people on the sofa. No, we had people on my bed, and we had a chat with them in a sort of Paulie Yates way on The Big Breakfast. But this was before that, of having this interview with. And we interviewed actually people today I look at and I think, my God, we interviewed those people, which I hadn't realised we had. So we did this show, watched by 400 people. It was on Granada, really, and it was on Granada, regional TV. And I thought, God, that's never going to take off. And then we did the online business because I was obsessed, and then that failed. And then the BBC, we'd done a pilot for BBC, and then the BBC came along. And so we did the BBC as we were doing the column. And then we did a book. So we'd done a book before we did telly. And the book was based on this image we used on the tube for advertising Ready To, and it was about everyone is different. So Susannah was there naked. We have a habit of nakedness, but naked from the waist up with melons on her breasts, and there was a picture of me looking a bit scrawny with fried eggs on my breasts, and it was everywhere. You couldn't miss it.
Whose idea was that?
BBH, very big advertising agency, and they came back with this idea, and we were like, that's it, and we even had, I remember cards.
Back again.
Cards back again, but that was my business card, the melon and the fried eggs. And sunny side up or down. And so we had this whole campaign, and it was, kind of fantastic. And we did the book, and it had the same cover. We sold 13,000 copies, which today might be okay, but then
that
it
feels
wasn't.
Like a lot.
Yeah, but I didn't think it was great. And so we then did the TV show, and we had this agent. They said, why don't you do a book? And so we couldn't get an advance from anyone. So we then did quite a good deal where we got a much higher percentage of the book sales than you would normally get. You normally get an advance, and then you get a percentage of sales once you've earned out a royalty. And not many people earn out their royalties because people get big advances. But they gave us a tiny advance, like $5,000. But they gave us a very big percentage because they thought they're never going out that royalty. So it was something like over 20,000 copies we would begin to get this percentage. And we sold 1 million copies of the book. So it did really well. And that book, which was also called What Not to Wear, was probably in every 10 households in the country. And I remember one week, I had no sense of what success looked like with the books. It was just we'd done it, and we'd written like these basic rules that we'd talked about all the time. And the woman called up and said, you sold 47,000 copies this week. And I was like, is that a lot? She was like, yes. So we were number one for months. It was really great. And then we went to America, and we did the Oprah show. And Oprah sort of made you or broke you. So we were unknowns doing the Oprah show, and we did 2 shows with her.
Intimidating?
Profoundly. And there's a certain way that you work with Oprah. So
what is she like, just quickly, as a lovely, kind, warm,
she's
professional?
She's a phenomenon. Unbelievably professional, phenomenal. So to begin with, we didn't know her, she didn't know us. So we are sitting on it's a live recording. So we're sitting on the stage, as it were. Yeah. There's an audience, a live audience, and then she comes in because she's the star. And everyone claps. And then she presents, this is Trinny and Susannah. They're going to tell us about genes, and we're going to learn about the mom gene, which is now a very fashionable gene. But we were just saying this is the worst gene in the entire world, all right? Which it was at some stage, out of interest. And I think when you become a mum, the mum gene becomes something totally different because your body's changed, you've had a baby, and it's like, no, the mum gene does not work. It works on people who are not mums. I still believe that profoundly today. So we sort of went around Chicago, sort of saying, she's in the mom gene and this is what's not good about it and this is why she has to change it. We put her in the right gene. And Oprah had this amazing, she taught me a few things, but she taught me this one thing, that when you are talking to an audience, you tell them once, you tell them again, and you tell them a third time. And that's when, they hear it, they notice it, it goes in. So you need these 3 repetitions of something to really send that point home. And
so an example of that would be...
So Susannah and I would say some statement, and she would say, so let's say we were talking about your body proportions, all right? And I would say that if you're pear-shaped, a drain pipe jean will make your hips look bigger. So wear a bootleg. So she goes, if you're a pear, this will this, and this will this. And then she'll say it later on in a different way.
Sorry, is she here? That was phenomenal. That was
that was not. That was terrible.
That was unbelievable.
So she taught me that. And then the third time we went on, and then that show we did had 20...
Did that make you...
No, so that show, this is her audience. So we had 29 million people watching it. I know. I mean, they had amazing figures then. And we were like in her 10th highest show. Yeah. So then in the third show, so she's realized that the American audience is liking us. And then in the third show, she lets us come on after she sat down, because we're now talking about our book. So she wants to give us more of an importance because we're now authors instead of experts talking about fashion.
Got it.
So we came and we did that. And then our book went to #1 in the New York Times from that show. So her impact was profound. It didn't stay there very long, but I have that #1 New York Times. And so she taught me a lot of things. She is an incredible woman. And I think she has, at the time, if you look at what she was doing at the time, now it might be she seems of the past to some people, but at the time she was so ahead of her game.
Yeah.
Not just, forget about being a woman of color in that space, but just for how she spoke to women and what she challenged. It was amazing compared to what there was on TV then. So I learned a lot from doing those shows. We did about 6-7 shows with her. And then we actually signed a contract with them to do because they used to take talent and make TV shows with them. And then something happened and we didn't end up doing it.
What happened?
I can't
Come
say.
on.
I can't. No, I really, this is not, because this would then be in the Daily Mail. So I can't
love
say.
it how you say something happened.
No, something happened. Something happened. It just didn't happen.
It just didn't happen.
It was a missed opportunity and it didn't happen. I'm not going to go into detail.
Okay, don't go into details. But when you realised that opportunity was going away, because that's a big opportunity.
Yes.
That must be upsetting.
Yes, but Susannah and I were already pregnant as well. And that wasn't the reason why, but we were pregnant. So there were other things happening.
Why do you stop the show with Susannah then? Because it was so successful and so great and everyone...
Because
I remember
other people started to watch other things. Everyone has a cycle, Jamie. Like Made in Chelsea, is it still as popular as it used to be?
Not since I've been on it.
Okay, sorry. I just fed you that bloody line, didn't I? I fed you that line. I really did.
Hey, listen, I'm just truthful. I don't know. It's true. And there is...
Notice he's going red if this is a very faded out lighting here. He's slightly embarrassed by his
I'm a bit embarrassed by
around himself.
But it does. Everything has cycles. Everything's the tide.
So we had
a
cycle, and we were, we had the book, we had the show, really, really popular, went from BBC Two to BBC One. And then we went to ITV, and it's amazing how, and this is something in our world today, is do you bring your audience with you, or do they want you to be what they discovered you as, and they're not prepared for you to evolve?
This is really big side.
Yeah. And this is something last week actually that really happened to me when I was thinking about that concept, because they want to own the discovery of you to themselves and to what it did for them and to their friends. And then when you slightly change that messaging, they're like, no, but please go back in that box that made me feel this is what I got from you.
Everyone wants you to be their secret. This is the reason why I think Netflix do a great job, right?
Yeah.
So I think Netflix do a great job. My own personal take is because I can sit with you and I'll go, God, have you seen that show Baby Reindeer? Have you seen it? And you go, no. And I go, oh my God, you got to watch it. Yeah. It's our secret together.
Yes.
They don't market it on screens and stuff like that. So everyone wants to be, as soon as you become not a secret, it's not interesting anymore.
Yeah, it is.
And so that's funny with audiences. Always, this is what I find with the influencer market, where people think that you can just hand influencers money and they promote your product. I just, for me, it's not things need to be a secret.
But things aren't always succeed, and then you've got to look further than that, Jamie, because that's looking in a very small thing, I've got to say, because Coca-Cola is not a secret and it's very successful, all right?
No.
So then what is it that thing that initially was a secret, how does that then break through and stay permanently successful? Because that is the difference between breaking through 50 million and building a business and failing.
And then we get on to Trinny, right? So Trinny, so here we go, because this is okay. Take Coca-Cola as an example, right?
Yes.
The reason why Coca-Cola is so magnificent, is that the right word? Is because you can get Coca-Cola in your local chicken shop, but you can also get in a Michelin-star restaurant.
Transcends wherever it's sold. It is its own entity with its own authority. It doesn't matter where it sits.
Doesn't matter.
Phenomenal brand marketing.
How does it do that? That's what with Trinny London, I feel, and I'm...
Shall I tell you what's clever about it?
Yes.
And this is what it is.
Can I tell you my take first?
Yes. You tell me your take, and then I'll give you my take. No, you tell me. You are on a roll.
I don't know if I am, because I'm not I'm male. I'm not getting up in the morning and using your products, but I know that my mother does, and I know loads of people that do. Oh God, because it feels accessible to everyone of that certain age group for women. It feels like it's... It feels premium, but affordable premium that you can get, and it's authentic, and you trust it, and you believe it. Have I just murdered it, or is that...
You've murdered it slightly.
Okay,
but
good.
You murdered it slightly, but we were talking more interestingly,
Yeah.
I want to talk about Trinny London, it's lovely, but generalistically,
Yes.
of how do you take something that was a secret and that was something that was shared, and you were going back to Baby
Completely.
Reindeer and Netflix, etc., and then it becomes huge and it's a unstoppable train.
Correct.
Because that's what everyone wants who's starting a business, is how do you go from one to the other?
Yeah.
Niche to phenomena, global brand.
Yeah.
Which is my trajectory.
Yeah.
So I feel that when you launch something, there's things that are fundamentally the DNA of the brand, which never change. And then there's the way you talk to your audience. And if it's this particular audience, that needs to adapt every 5 years. So for us, we're that woman, primary market 35 to 45. So the woman who, when we launched, was maybe 45 is now 50 or 53. So she's on the ride and she knows the journey, and she's just, I don't need to talk primarily to her now because she's on her journey with Trinny London. But I need to talk to that new set of people who are jumping in. And that new set of people who are jumping in are now millennials, because millennials have turned 40.
Oh my God.
And the messaging that I would use to talk to a millennial is so profoundly different than that I would talk to somebody who is a Gen X. Because a Gen X, or Y, Gen Y. It's Gen X is very short, Y, and then millennial, and then Gen Z.
You know better than me.
Okay, I don't know. Whichever one it is, but it's the
Boomer.
one before. No, there's 3 in between boomer and millennial.
Okay.
Oh, there's 2 in between boomer. Whatever it is.
Jemima's going to write them down on my thing,
Fine.
and we'll
That's
find
great.
out.
So we're gonna work it out. But that woman who I'm talking to now, the one I talked to before, it's let me hold your hand and take you on a journey and teach you about skincare and routines and what different ingredients are and how to do your makeup so you are just...
To shine.
It's so you look fantastic.
Yeah.
You don't look like caked down. We have this sort of freshness. Now, when I talk to the person who's just coming in, for me, it's saying, you know the difference. I'm not going to presume you're needing to have your hand held maybe as much as that person 5 years older than you who didn't have that education when they were 20. But in your 20s, as a millennial, you were the center of the world. In your 30s, you were the center of the world still. But you touch 40 and suddenly you might, you wallpapered your rented apartment. You just made everything the center of your life. And you spent all your money on yourself. And now there's a tiny bit of growing up you've done where you're perhaps deciding if you want to, that you want to be a mum, or other things are coming to your life which don't always put you at the center of your life. And that's when your ear is open to hearing somebody else's opinion a bit more or getting help. And so the way...
And you knew that because of personal experience, right? So
Yeah.
you felt it. You were like, okay,
yeah,
this
so
is what
so with my whole team now, I'm saying I really want to see assets where we talk to that woman, because we've spent a long time talking to this first woman who came to the brand at the beginning of the brand. And this is where the ad for Coca-Cola has changed. There was an ad for Coca-Cola, which is the sexy man making your window clean. And that was for that woman to feel that's what it gives me. If I can't have the man, I can have a great Coke. And then it moved on to something else. So it's still Coca-Cola. It still tastes the same. There's still that thing at the end of it's efficacious. So my product is still efficacious. It still do the work. But the way I tell the story has to adapt to that person of today who has different things around them that influence them, but is the same age group as that person before, because they grew up with different things.
So you basically what you're saying is that you constantly need to be swimming rather than treading water. If you're treading water, then you're sort of dying because you're just staying in the same thing that you've always been doing. And actually, you constantly need to move and adapt the whole time in order to make it successful. You have to change.
Yes, you have to understand the nuance of telling your story to a slightly an audience coming into it now, and what is the nuance you have to change so they hear you.
How much do you think personality is the success of the brand?
This is something at the moment that is a big deal for me for many different reasons. So when we started the brand, I was four table legs. All right, because I held up the brand.
Got it. I didn't understand what you...
Yeah, so I held out the brand. So here is Trinny London and Trinny Woodall's here and here. Yeah, you got it now. I would say now we're at 2.5. So the only way I can measure that is we have, I have a few million followers on my social. We have nearly 1 million across different socials for Trinny London. And those audiences overlap, but not fully. So I can look at who are those people who just came straight to Trinny London without coming through me. Mm-hmm. And how many people don't know what I used to do in my life, or they think Trinny London is a brand. And those are people who have been told about it by somebody else, and they're just talking about the product now. They're not saying Trinny, who was obsessed with skincare because she had acne, and that story. They're saying, this is a great retinoid. You must try it. So that is where I want to get to, because that gives greater value to the whole proposition. That is, for me, a very solid business. So if I was knocked over tomorrow by a bus, the company will be fine.
Yeah, but Trinny, I think you are... It's interesting, right? Because I see some correlations with my brand, Candy Kittens, right? Which is where it was based on me as a personality, but also the product has to have longevity. Has to.
100, more than anything else. Candy Kitten has to taste good.
Has to.
And what you're selling me as a marketing concept has to work. I have to feel it's sort of guilt-free candy or whatever, that premise of it tastes delicious, it's not too naughty, but
all of that stuff.
Yeah. So.
But it's interesting. I was walking through Birmingham Selfridges, and you have a stand in there. Yeah. I saw it. You have this stand in there. So from my take of the brand now, but I know. But if I didn't know you, I would still know Trinny, and I would still consume it because I trust it, I believe it, it looks good, all those kind of things. So I think but actually at the same time, every brand you want to connect with because you want to feel has an authenticity.
It's how you get. So the biggest success when you're a founder-led brand and your name is not above the door, so slightly different, because it might take a bit longer if your name's above the door to transcend that. So people, when they think of Charlotte Tilbury, they think of it as a brand more than her. And for me, it's about how do you take the DNA of what I am, the energy, the emotiveness, the say it how it is, and make sure that in every single asset we create, there is that in some form. And that it's empathetic. We are all about how we make you feel more than how we make you look. I am, in my connection with people I have across social, about how can I make you feel better. I don't say how can I make you look better. It's like the golden circle of marketing. It's like Steve Jobs saying, I'm just going to make your life easier. He didn't say, here, buy a computer. He said, I'm going to make your life easier. That was the heart of that golden circle. So we want to make you feel great. To fearlessly feel your best self is our motto. So I'm going to do that by delivering you products that help you get there. And the more emotive it is, the more you can put the DNA of a founder into a brand and then allow that brand to have its own identity and life, but infused with emotiveness, which creates trust.
You talk about loneliness, and this is really interesting because I think so many people feel loneliness.
I know.
I had this theory, right, that I have a theory that your 30s are quite lonely.
It depends what you're doing in each decade. My 20s were lonely. Funny enough, my loneliest time in my life was 9 to 11.
Really?
Yeah. I remember feeling profound loneliness. I didn't see my siblings much. They were at boarding school. I had been taken out of boarding school and put into a day school in Germany. At an American day school, I didn't know the people. And then during the holidays, I just didn't have that many friends. I was really lonely. And I remember I had 1 or 2 friends, and I was also bullied at school a bit. And so I felt I didn't know how to become friends with people, you know, and that probably, if I look back, I can feel myself in my room feeling really lonely. And then I don't know if I felt that lonely again until probably before I stopped using. And I just felt there's nobody I want to call. There's nobody I feel I can call. And when you're left with that sense of who can I call? And in the end, I called somebody who'd been a therapist for me for a few months. And I said, please, I've got this window today. Can you get me into rehab? Because I know that window will go. And I need to remove myself from my life and get somewhere safe. You know?
I think lots of people have that. I remember 27 years old, I was shooting Made in Chelsea, and we were going to the south of France to film out there. And partying and just being chaotic in lots of different ways. And I was living in a flat with a friend of mine who wasn't there. And I remember sitting in the middle of the flat and thinking, oh, okay, I've got this evening. I didn't have a girlfriend, nothing. And I was leaving the next day. I thought, okay, who do I call? And I swear to you, I couldn't call anyone.
Yeah.
Because all of my friends that I had made, I had dropped because they weren't as exciting as everything new around me.
Yeah.
And all of the people that I had made friends with were fickle friends at that time anyway. And so I was stuck in this sort of period, a limbo period, of just going, well, I'm too embarrassed and too ashamed to call all of my old friends because I've sort of slightly ditched them over the past year. And these new people, I don't even really know what they're doing. So, and that for me was a huge turning point, where then I started doing therapy then. And I think so many people go there, and so many people listening to it probably go through periods where they do that, where they, you know, find something new and exciting and all these different things, and they get so wrapped up in it, and suddenly they just go, oh shit, what's been happening? Yeah. You become that tunnel vision, you suddenly get lost in it all.
I think the thing to remember, if anyone is listening to this or watching this, I think it's always good to put yourself in the position of other people. So if you have really good friends who were your really good friends, and you feel you've stepped on top of them and gone to what looks shiny, and you've got to go back and think, how deep were those friendships? Were they really solid? And if you were that person and the roles were reversed, would you take that call? And you would, because a friendship which has been nurtured in wellness, even if it becomes unwell, it still has a foundation of something. And ultimately, all those people who I stopped seeing when I was really not well, when I got well, I needed to just stay with people in recovery. So I didn't actually see any of my old friends. But after about a year, I begun to pick up the phone to people who had been those really old friends. And those were ones that were made through circumstance when I had been originally well. And they were always going to say, Trinny, you know, I'm there for you. If you have an intention, which I can see is an intention where you want to really shift from where you've been at, where we haven't had anything in common, I'll be there for you. I would be there for anyone who was like that. You know, there's people I've let go of in my life because I just see they go on this crazy path, and I feel I don't want that sort of negative energy in my life. But if they called me up one day and said, I'm really fucked, I'd so be there for them. You know, it's just you're waiting for somebody to go on that path and find themselves a bit better.
You have all these shining little lights. You really do. These amazing things, you know. I met your daughter. She's beautiful, amazing. You have that. You have your business. You had these TV shows. You also, and I used the word pockets before, pockets of darkness. And you have dealt with grief. How do you deal with grief? Because that is a really hard thing. And it's something that I keep, for some reason, I don't know why, thinking about at the moment. Because probably I'm in my 30s. People don't live forever. Things happen. And it scares me a lot. And I know people listening to this, maybe are going through grief, or they've had people who they've lost. How do you, because your ex-husband died, how do you deal with that?
There's no textbook answer to that question, because everyone goes through different things. And it was unexpected. So there's, you know, somebody's going to die, and then you don't know somebody is going to die because Johnny took his own life. And there are quite a few people who have been affected by suicide. So death is terrible and final, whatever, but suicide is a permanent problem, permanent solution to a temporary problem. when you look at what it is. So that it's like that tsunami that comes, you know, and it kind of pulls the guts out of you. But you also, I have got inner strength, and I had a lot of people relying on me when that happened. And I needed to be the one who would look after everyone, because also it was a place I felt comfortable in, to be the one who would just take care. And I had for a few years, because Lila's father was not always well. So I've been the sort of person who'd done that within the family unit. So when Johnny died, we all helped each other, but maybe some of them looked to me to what to do next. And so that kept me strong, because I felt I've got to be the one who can come up with the answers and do things. But also it made me feel lots of things were going on at the time. It was not the best. You know, I was starting Trinny London, and I hadn't raised the money, and I was living in a home that was too expensive. There were lots of things against everything. And it was the time when maybe I should have knuckled down and made things as safe as possible for Lila. But I also knew that this was this crossroads in my life. And sometimes when you are faced with the worst thing you think could happen, because it was always the thing I dreaded, actually, that something like this might happen through.
Why? Because
Johnny was not always very well. And it was something in the back of my mind. And he'd always said this statement of 99% of everything you worry about doesn't happen. And this was the 1%. And it had happened. So there was nothing worse can happen. There was this feeling I remember, of nothing worse can happen now. So I should take the greatest risk, which was to then say, I'm not going to go and try and get a job. I'm going to start this business. Because there was that moment of friends saying to me, Trinny, maybe you should just get a job. I don't know what the fuck I would get as a job, to be honest. But also, this is, I have nothing, you know, you could say I have more to lose, because I could lose my house, which I did sell my house in the end to fund the business. But emotionally, I couldn't have lost more than to lose my daughter's father for her. You know, it was the biggest thing that would be significant in my life unless she lost me. So it makes you stronger. Then also other things happened where there was a lot of fallout. He left a bit of a mess. So I didn't grieve for many, many years, because I was dealing with this fallout. And so I was a bit angry as well. And anger can be a healthy thing sometimes, to just, you know, not deal with stuff, because anger always hides other emotions. It's not you know, if anyone's gone to rehab, you say, I'm angry. That's not a feeling, you know, that's a state of being. What's underneath it? That's always the thing, was what underneath it. But I feel it kept me going just to deal with that whole process. And it was only really quite a few years later that I missed him, because also the memory of him the least well was
faded.
You know, faded. And I remember, and this weekend I was with people who really loved Johnny, and quite a lot of the weekend we spoke about Johnny, and it was so nice to just.
And you were able
remember.
to were
Yes.
you able? There was no sort of,
because they were just remembering all the great stuff. And they were there at the beginning of my relationship with him, and just how he was an unbelievably special person. He was flawed, but he was profoundly special. And he would be incredibly kind to people with no sense of their standing in life at all. Of anyone I know, whether he was sitting next to Prince Charles or chatting with the doorman outside a third-rate hotel in Tokyo, he'd find something in common with them. He would connect with them immediately. He was the most generous person, not always with his own money, but he was so generous. He would give up anything to help somebody else. You know, he had this feeling. He was incredible around children. You know, kids and teenagers loved him. At Johnny's memorial, there were about 1,200 people came, and probably 100 of them were kids who came, teenagers who came without their parents, who just had come across Johnny, and he'd been their champion in some way. And, you know, he was a very, very special person. So I want Lila also, who doesn't remember Johnny so well. She does, but she's very Scorpio. She's very, keeps it all low. But for her to remember these things, and it will be 10 years since Johnny died. So I think I want to do a dinner this year and just like, let's remember Johnny. Because for a few years she didn't want to go to those dinners. Her brother did, but she didn't. It was too much in there, just, you know.
That's amazingly special. And also to juggle parenthood with all of that. You have your book, which is Fearless, and I think you kind of, that's what you personify. You have to be this fearless person the whole time. You really do, though, Trinny, and it's amazing. And it feels like there are lots of things that could have broken you, and you have just always, which my mum always says to me, you've got to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, it's such an old-fashioned expression.
Keep going, one foot in front of the other, and keep that life in your eyes.
Yeah.
You keep going, and that's what you've done. You've always just gone, we got to keep going, we got to keep going, we got to keep going. Because it's very easy just to go, fuck it, I'm out.
Yeah.
And you haven't done that.
No, I can't do duvet therapy for more than a day.
I have 8 questions for you. Are you ready for them?
Yeah.
What's a saying or phrase that makes you smile or cheers you up?
No idea.
What is it off the
saying or phrase that cheers me
You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything.
Fuck. I had
Happy
a really
birthday.
good answer. No, I had a really good answer, and it's just gone out my bloody head.
Perfect.
Oh.
Okay, well, that's good for the first one. We'll take that one.
Yeah, you see, when I have to think about
But what
things,
is it? If you
I'm
don't
not
think
good
about
at-
it, if you don't think about it, what is it? What is if someone says something to you? Like, what is someone?
I know.
Here we go.
Hello. It's what Susannah texts me in the middle of nothing, and you know, I might not have spoken to her for 2 weeks. She goes, "Hi, how's it going?" And it just cheers me up. It's our nickname for each other.
I love that. I know, it's like that thing, that nostalgia.
Yeah,
Just goes.
everything comes up in 2 flashes. Yeah.
Best compliment anyone's ever given you?
This is an interesting one. It was not a person, but I always admired people who are. Have you ever, Jamie? Are you a 30 under 30?
Yes.
You are.
I am.
I'm a 50 over 50. I missed out, obviously, on
We're
the
talking
30
about
under.
Forbes. We're
Yeah,
talking about
Forbes
Forbes.
magazine, this financial American magazine, they sort of make these lists, and 30 under
That's
30 was the
amazing.
only list they had. And then I think people who were over kind of said, "What about if I'm 40 and I'm starting to do really well?" So they did this one 50 over 50.
Well
And it's
done.
kind of amazing when you look at the other people on
amazing.
the list, because
It's
you feel,
amazing.
wow, you know. So that was, that for me.
And well deserved. And good on you. That
Yeah.
is freaking awesome.
Yeah, it was good.
That is cool.
Yeah.
What scares you most about yourself?
That I don't know when to stop.
Good one. When was the last time you cried and why?
This is a weird one. It's going to take 2 seconds, but I went a few weeks ago for some advice from somebody on share structure of a business. And they were quite a quirky character, and somebody else had recommended them. And we were talking, and I've been talking about the business and everything. And then they said to me, "Do you ever go to the office?" And it's probably a little weak spot for me, because I have some people who sort of say to me when I say I'm the CEO, and they go, "But who really runs a business?" And I'm like, "Me?" And they go, "No, but really." And I get,
Wow.
"Are you kidding?" But I will sometimes get that from certain men. So when this guy said that, I felt probably, I've told him everything about the business. He's here to give me advice on share structure, and he's asking me this question. So I said, "Why did you ask me the question?" And I saw him getting really frizzly. He said, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" And I said, "Why do you ask the question? Would you ask?" And I mentioned another person who's quite a famous person that he also looks after, who's a man. And I said, "Would you ask them that?" And he said, "Well, yes, I would, and they do, but these other 3 people don't go to the office, and they run very expensive. And I think you're a really chippy woman." All right. And I was so shocked, because one thing I have never been accused of in my life is being chippy. And I was like, "I'm sorry. And I have, a wife who runs a huge business, and she's not, she will do this." And I was just like, and I thought, this is just spiraling out of control.
Yeah.
And then, worst thing, I felt myself pricking with tears.
No, you
because
didn't.
it upset me so much.
Yeah.
And because I think I am probably not touchy, but I'm sensitive, because I've
course.
bashed a lot of people who sort of say, "Do you really run a business?" And I'm like, "You have no idea." But I just don't want to. You have no fucking idea. I just want to say, of course I do, and be cool about it. And I just thought, I've told my whole business, I've said this thing I've built, and then you asked me that question. And so I said, maybe if I explained to you the background of why perhaps I'm sensitive about that question. And then he kept going on and said, "Well, so-and-so wouldn't be sensitive, whatever."
Wow. So you felt almost more attacked, and then it started to
Yeah,
bubble.
and
then you almost felt even weak, because you started to get teary, and you were like, "Oh my God."
And then he
this is-"
said, "Do you need a tissue?"
"Oh, what a fucker.
Yeah, and this is... So I said, no, I don't, thank you very much. I said, why don't we mind the movie backwards? Because I think you're getting a little bit aggressive as well. So anyway, then I left, and then I sort of wound the movie back. We said, we'll be in touch. And then I spoke to somebody. And I got back to the office and I was really upset. And then I spoke to somebody who knew them. And they said, they had 2 female CEOs who were suing them right now. And I thought, that's really interesting. Mm. And it took away all my feelings of I thought that I really hit a nerve.
Yeah. So actually, and also what's interesting is that what would happen is that because you're running it, you're building it, you're doing it, it's all of that pressure. You're like Atlas. You're holding up the world. Yeah. And then when someone takes that away from you, you go, you have no clue. Yeah. You have no clue. Yeah. And that makes people emotional. Great answer. Yeah. What's something you can't let go of?
Every morning I get the email from Trinny London that we send out for Life Cycle, and I analyze it like I'm a customer. That's why I still do all my Instagram comments, and I do other things. You've got to really keep in touch with the follower who's the customer, and etc. Mm-hmm. And I'll see something and I'll think, oh, that was meant to land here, but I think it landed here. And I will send an email to 3 people who are involved in that and say, yeah, I used to send an email and say, well, what the fuck is this? And now I do, I always try and give an alternative. All right, but I'll still do it. And I don't think I'll stop doing it. But I might do it in a more grown-up way. Yeah.
Great answer. What's something that you'd be embarrassed for people to know you like or want?
I'm not really embarrassed by anything.
Great.
So I don't think there is anything. I don't worry what people think.
That's a great answer. Yeah. And that's what most people should be like. What turns you off?
You have what turns me on and what turns me off in this one, did you?
What turns you off and what turns you on? Yeah, but
right, first... I'm going to talk about the context of the same thing.
Okay.
So, what turns me on if it was totally remote is when I think of a name, or the group of us thinks of a name for a new product, and I think, wow, got it. That embodies what it is. We had a name for something the other day, and I thought, this is so good. I know where this is going to go. I can imagine it everywhere. But what turns me on a lot now is when somebody we do a lot of cross-functional meetings as we grow as a business. So when somebody who's in a department says an idea to me about something for another department, because I think you're thinking cross-functionally, I love that. You're thinking outside of your box. I love it. And then I see the potential of the team growing and growing and growing. I just see, because that is the ultimate. If team members are thinking about their own thing, but they're considering other things, they're thinking broadly, they're thinking of the North Star, they're really in the lane. What I don't love in this context of that is when I'm in a cross-functional meeting, which means people from different departments, and somebody who's presents to me and keeps trying to get my eye contact, and I'm like, present to the room. And a part of that is because they maybe are a people pleaser and they want to make sure they can see I like their idea. And I just want them to have got to a place of more confidence where that doesn't matter anymore. So if I'm in my very grown-upness, I will then think, how do I help that person to not feel they have to get my approval to present to the room? How do I give them more self-confidence? And if I'm not thinking that broadly, I just think, please don't keep looking at me. Can you just look at the room? And so I won't look at them when they look at me, hoping they'll then train themselves to look at the room. But I'm not giving them the context which they need.
Love that. Love that. That's great. And also just giving that self-awareness of like, hang on a second, there's everyone here.
Yeah.
What do you like most about yourself?
That I sense people quite well.
Really?
Yeah. I have a very good bullshitometer. Mm-hmm. And I just sense when people are really what they appear to be or whether they're not. And generally I'm right.
So what do you think about me?
We're here today doing the podcast, aren't we, darling?
I take that as a positive. Trinny, I freaking love you. You're the greatest. Thank you so much for going to the podcast. You're amazing.
Thanks, darling.